Welcome back to Grow and Glow with yours truly, Miss Independent, Miss Alex Nicholas, La Mera Mera, per my mom. Episode 2, we are actually going to talk about something that is more serious, but before we get to it, I wanted to go ahead and just wish a happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday!
It's my birthday. It's for everyone to share this video, like this video, and comment on this video. I would really appreciate it if you just write happy birthday or whatever it is that you want to write, but definitely comment on the video if you watch it. Welcome back. Thank you for joining. On episode 2, we are going to talk about something a little bit more serious. I wish I wasn't talking about this, and I'm not saying this from a place where I am ashamed of it, because as a matter of fact, I'm very proud of what I'm about to say. It's just a very stressful and anxiety-driven topic for me to talk about. If anybody knows me, they know that I'm actually a DACA recipient. And if you're wondering, well, what the heck is DACA? Like, what does that even mean? DACA. And it stands for Deferred Action of Childhood Arrival. That was an executive act that was put in place back in 2012 by the president. What that allowed people like me is to apply for a work permit for 2 years. So we would go ahead and submit our application, and for 2 years we would be allowed to legally work. The reason for why this applied to me is because I was brought here to the US when I was 2 years old. What that meant is that I grew up without documents. I grew up without papers. I was not legal in this country since I was 2 years old. As I grew up, I realized very quickly that my journey was going to be very different than everybody else's journey. And so because of that, I started to do what I could. I tried to have a job. Unfortunately, it was not a legal job. What I mean legal is that I wasn't supposed to be working, but I had to anyway. I had to. When the president back in 2012 decided to issue this executive action to give us all a permit, we were excited. Finally, we get to have something that allows us, the children that arrived to this country, it allows us to have something so that we can start to move forward in our life and start to build our life. That is what DACA is. The way that we would apply or qualify for DACA, you were supposed to have arrived before 2007 and could prove that you grew up here and that you were now 18 years old. Then you could go ahead and apply for DACA. You also had to issue a payment of, I think back then was about $425. It was closer to $400. And so you would go ahead and file your paperwork, file your applications, file your fee. You would then receive a receipt notice from USCIS advising you that they received your application. Within a couple months, you would receive a letter that would advise you to go get your biometrics done. If people aren't familiar with what biometrics are, basically you show up at a USCIS office on the date and time that you're asked through the letter that you receive. And then you go ahead and sit in a room. And in the room, you wait until your name is called, and they take a fingerprint of every single one of your fingers on each hand. This process was very nerve-wracking within itself. It was very stressful. I remember being one of the first people that applied because nobody quite believed that we were getting this opportunity per se. And sitting in that office and getting my biometrics done, I realized how I still felt like a criminal. This was still a feeling of, even though I feel like I never really did anything wrong, I was still being treated as such. within the application, one part of it that they ask you to do is that they ask you to list every single one of the addresses where you've ever lived. So you have to go through every single address that you've ever had. So basically, they're like, we want to know where you were since you arrived, and we want your fingerprints. So yeah, definitely felt like a criminal. But I did it because I preferred to work legally and to move up than to be stuck where I was. And I'll definitely get into that at some point. But yeah, definitely felt like it was necessary for me to go ahead and get this than not have it. In regard to DACA and how it works is that they give you your work permit for 2 years, and then once you get closer to the end of your 2 years, you reapply. The president, it was a different president, he threatened DACA along with the court system. They found that the fact that the president in 2012 had passed this law, it was him solely who passed this, so the court felt that that was not fair, and so they tried to threaten to remove DACA. It did go through the judicial system. DACA did stay in place. There was a lot of protest. I myself went to protest to keep DACA in place. Although DACA stayed in place, the part of it that was very unfortunate, because it happened within a year or two that we went to court to fight for DACA to stay, no one new was allowed to apply. And what that means is that when DACA was first put in place, you had to be 18 to apply for the first time. And if you were turning 18 a year later or 2 years later, when the court decided that no new applications were going to be allowed, well, then you were out of luck because you couldn't apply. So then we still, till this day, have a lot of young people, a lot of kids who grew up in this country, who were brought here to this country when they were babies, and they don't have any kind of legalization status. Because again, something like DACA won't allow them to apply for the first time because they were not 18 when DACA was allowing people to apply for the first time. So all DACA is allowing to do now is for people who already have DACA, for people to renew their DACA. So that already leaves a huge chunk of people, of young people, of kids who grew up here, who again don't have a legalization status as we speak. When I speak to people about DACA, the most common question that I'm asked is, why don't you just apply for residency or citizenship? Let me say this loud and clear. There is no path to become a resident or a citizen in this country just because you've been in this country for an extended amount of time, or just because you've grown up here. There's no legalization path for it. We were trying to get something to get approved, which is called the DREAM Act, which would in fact allow children who arrive to this country at a young age, it would allow them to then move through a path of legalization. But that has been shot down every single time since 2003, maybe even further back. It's been 20 years since we've tried to get something in place so that children who grew up here could eventually become citizens. But because it just doesn't pass, there's nothing in place. The only way people can become residents and eventually citizens in this country is through the military, which personally I haven't really heard of that happening, or an extraordinary reason, like if you're someone of extraordinary talent. Again, I haven't really heard of that happening. And then the other two options is through a family member. It has to be your parent or a sibling. Trust me, if you are a young person who is my age, there's a likelihood that your parents are either barely trying to get their process of legalization or don't have papers. They're not legal in this country. So that's usually a long shot. And if you have a sibling request you, that's the legalization process that, based on my understanding, takes like 20 years. It takes a really long time. The last way that you could get some form of legalization is if you are someone who either witnessed violence or experienced violence or assault. But other than that, that's it. That's the only way that someone like me can be legal in this country. Oh, and of course, through marriage. And the idea of marrying someone just for papers does not go over well. One, because you can get caught. And two, I've seen firsthand how karmic that can become. And even if you do marry someone that you love, and eventually you speak to them about your status and how they can help, it may not always go over well. I've met people who straight up tell me, I'm afraid to have this conversation with my partner because although I've been with them for 10 years, we have kids together, they know I love them, they still question my love for them because of this. That's the simple truths of people in my shoes, is that if I decide to marry someone tomorrow and we have to talk about my legal status, we're going to have a second conversation of, do you love me in the first place? Like, did you even do this from a place where you love me or because you wanted to get legal status? Like, that is very much a realistic conversation. Like, I feel like I've covered everything regarding what DACA is. I hope I made sense. So this year, 2024, we were all advised that DACA was going to increase their fees. They had previously increased their fees about maybe 6 years ago. I might be wrong on that. So we started to pay $495 to get our work permit renewed every 2 years or so. This year, they're increasing the fee to $555. And I believe that's the fee if you file it online. If you don't file it online and you send it via mail, the fee is closer to $600 from what I've understood. The current state of DACA, this is probably the part that was very difficult for me to talk about. The current state of DACA is the fact that some offices are approving DACA renewal requests. They're approving it within a couple weeks, even days. An office like Texas is approving requests within a few days, and people who submit their DACA request can go about their life. They could go ahead and submit their requests within a couple months of expiration, get their new work permit, and continue working. It's not until you encounter an issue with other offices, like the office in Nebraska. It might be multiple offices, but I know that an office in Nebraska, it's extremely inconsistent. And this is where the crisis comes in, is that I have not been given a clear answer as to why it's so inconsistent, yet we're being told you have to pay more. And what I mean by the fact that it's inconsistent is that me and my sister could be filing our DACA request at the same time in the same state, and she will get her DACA approved within 2 months, and I may have to wait up to 10 months. So that means that if I file my DACA request within 120 days or 150 days that I'm supposed to file it, I still have to wait 10 months. Why? Who knows? No one knows. No one knows why USCIS is experiencing this kind of inconsistency with renewing our work permits. It doesn't make sense. If every single office is supposed to be processing the same type of applications, why is it that an office in Texas is taking like 2 weeks and an office in Nebraska, I guess it's per officer, one officer is approving applications within a couple weeks, and then another officer is taking up to 10 months. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know if you can tell, but it's very frustrating. And it's upsetting. It's anxiety driven. If I file my DACA renewal request today and it takes 10 months and I filed it within the time frame of 3 months, like let's say that I file it today and my work permit is going to expire in 3 months, I'm out of a job. My employer is going to let me go. They're going to terminate my employment because my DACA renewal or my work permit isn't renewed on time. And yes, there are expedited requests that you can do, but with the expedited request, let me tell you that multiple people, representatives from USCIS have said it has to be an extraordinary reason for you to get an expedited request approved. They don't just hand it out to anyone. I guess you guys are wondering, hey, like, why are you talking about it now, Alex? Like, what's the whole point of this now? The whole point of this now is that I'm in that position. I lost my job. I became unemployed. Currently, as we speak, I don't have a job, and it's not because I don't want to have one, but it's because USCIS is taking longer than they're supposed to renew my work permit, and they're not telling me why. Let's go ahead and backtrack a little bit. My work permit was going to expire on March 15, 2024. Toward the end of 2023, I asked my peers. I said, how long has it taken you guys to renew your DACA? Several of my peers said it only took 6 weeks. I said, great. That's fabulous. That's great. You know, it's only taking 6 weeks. Perfect. And so I decided to pay off some of my debt that I had for the end of 2023. Again, the reason for why this is important is because we have to pay $500 when we submit our application. And so I said, perfect. Let me go ahead and pay off these cute little bills that I have over here on the side. And then come January, I'm going to go ahead and file my DACA renewal request. And that's exactly what I did. I went ahead and filed my DACA renewal request as soon as the end of the year came in. New year 2024, we're getting our DACA renewal request, and life is going to continue as it is. For those of you who didn't watch my first video, I am a single 32-year-old woman who owns a home. And I've climbed up the corporate ladder enough to the point where I'm no one comes in and pays any of my bills. I pay all of my bills, and I've done a really good job at it. And yes, I've gotten to a point where I've had a really good job, but I've worked my butt to get there. Again, I filed my request. Everything's great. After a couple weeks, I noticed that I just got my receipt notice. USCIS said we received your renewal request. That's it. Usually what happens is that right after they receive your renewal request and you get your notice, they issue you the biometrics letter almost immediately. They tell you, hey, we're gonna need you to go in and give us your fingerprints again for the 100th time, or we are actually going to waive that this time. I noticed that after a couple weeks, I didn't get that. That's when I kind of started to panic because my employer was starting to ask me for my work permit. I was getting automated emails every week toward the end of January of this year asking me for my work permit, and I still didn't have it. And so I went ahead and started to do a little bit of research. One of my peers said, hey, there's this support group on Facebook. You should go on it and see what's going on with DACA. I did that. I went on it. It was this is around the end of January, beginning of February. And when I started to read all of the comments of people saying that their DACA was getting delayed up to 10 months, my heart dropped to my butt. My heart dropped to my butt when I saw that people were literally writing on the comment section, my DACA is getting delayed past 150 days. I've lost my job. I'm losing my job. What am I going to do? It put a fear in me that I don't know if I'm still in denial of it. I don't know if I've processed it. That fear that I felt at that very moment when I realized what USCIS was doing to people, I would not wish that on anyone. I would not wish that kind of fear on anyone. And so I started to call USCIS. I called every single day. I submitted my expedited request. I asked through the request in my letter. I basically said, hey, if I don't get this renewal request expedited, I'm going to lose my job. My livelihood depends on it. I'm the only one responsible for all of these bills that I'm sharing with you. Are you able to make the exception and renew my work permit? And my first request was denied. I contacted my congressman. I think they're tired of me because they're not calling me back. I submitted a second request and I was told, hey, usually nothing happens until you get to 150 days. So no one's going to do anything until I get up to 150 days of waiting for my renewal request. March 15th came around and that was the last day I was employed. I lost my job. And I know people are going to say, well, you should have known, you should have filed it sooner, you should have done this. I should have, but how was I supposed to know? Like, at the end of the day, I hate to say it, but my life does not revolve around DACA. And it shouldn't. Because it still doesn't explain why some people are getting their work permit renewed within a couple weeks and some people are waiting 10 months. It still doesn't explain that. It still doesn't justify that. That within itself is a crisis. It's an injustice to sit here and make people wait 10 months to get their work permit renewed and renew other work permits within a couple weeks. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't. USCIS and this country does not care about us. They don't care about DACA recipients because then this would not be happening. They don't. Because how do you explain making our fees go up to $550, $600 and yet forcing people to wait 10 months to get their work permit renewed? How do you explain that? There really is no explanation for it. The message that I received after speaking to several USCIS agents and calling nonstop is that they don't care. They don't care. Because I said it multiple times, hey, the reason I'm doing this is because I'm about to lose my job. I've lost my job. And they stick to their script. I've had people literally tell me over the phone, you people always do this. A representative straight up said that to me on the phone. They said, you people always do this. I wanted to say, I'm sorry, lady, but I'm paying your bills. I'm paying your bills. I didn't, though. I was like, okay, can I talk to somebody else? Because you're clearly not helping. There was a young man on TikTok, and he basically said what I was thinking. Beside people not caring, beside this country and USCIS not caring about DACA recipients, I don't think we care about each other enough to really stand up for each other. And I know I'm sounding extremely pessimistic and negative when I'm saying that, but why is it that if someone is writing on Facebook, they literally start the sentence by saying, I'm stressed out, I'm worried, I'm anxious that I submitted my DACA and it's not going to get approved on time. Why are we telling these people who are already in a high stress level that they messed up, that they should have done it sooner? What's the whole point of that? What's the whole point of that? There really is no point of saying that to someone. It really, no, it's not acceptable. If I'm being honest, it's not. Lastly, back to TikTok, I guess. There was this young man who specifically said, I'm about to give up my DACA status and go back to Mexico. And he's not wrong. He's really not wrong. Every time I read that, and it's a countless amount of comments that I find of people saying, I'm about done with DACA and I just want to go back to my country because clearly this country doesn't care about me. They just care about taking my money. Obviously, it's the truth. We were given this work permit so that we could start to work, but more importantly, so that we could start to move forward. DACA was put in place 12 years ago. 12 years ago. Over a decade. And we still don't have anything. We've stopped caring. I'm glad, I'm happy. When DACA first started, there were a certain amount of applicants. And again, DACA does not allow new applicants. And that amount of applicants that are renewing their DACA, that amount has reduced because there are people who are finding other ways to get legalization. But there's still a good amount of us still depending on DACA to put a roof over our heads, to put food on our plates. And no one is talking about it. We're not even standing up for ourselves anymore. We're not. It's upsetting. It's very upsetting. Yes, I wish I would have known this a long time ago. I wish I would have known that it was an issue, but I didn't. I didn't know. And that was the first thing that I said in my letter when I submitted my expedited request. When I would speak to agents, I would say, hey, I didn't know that some officers were backed up. If I would have known, I would have filed it a long time ago. That's not the message I was receiving. I was being told by my peers the USCIS office was only taking a couple of months to renew work permits. And this is what I'm never, ever, ever going to do. Is that I'm never going to go against another immigrant. Because I know that there's a lot of people saying, well, during the new year or around the new year, there were a massive amount of people seeking asylum, and that's why the offices were backed up. Okay, so if that's the case, why is it that within the same office, one officer or one representative is approving DACA applications, again, within a couple weeks? And then within that same office, another officer is taking way longer. Like, why is it? Because I can show anyone who wants to make that point, I can show you that there are people who are literally saying, me and my spouse filed at the same time on the same day, and for some reason, mine got approved within a couple weeks, and for some reason, my partner has been waiting for months. It is my understanding that there are people who have been waiting to get their DACA renewed since May of last year. It's about to be a year. If you can't tell, this particular topic makes me very upset and very passionate. So I do want to apologize if I'm coming off as that, if I'm coming off excessively passionate or excessively upset, But it is upsetting. It is upsetting that I have to go through this. And I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people who have to sit there and realize, I'm going to lose my job. And what am I going to do? What am I going to do when I lose my job? When I can no longer earn enough money to pay for the roof over my head and the food on my plate. That's the part that's not okay. That's not okay. It's not. It really isn't. Again, the message that I received from USCIS is that sucks for you. You're the unlucky one. It sucks for you. Oh well. You just have to sit there and wait. We don't care what happens to you. USCIS doesn't care if I end up under a bridge in a couple months. They don't. They don't care. The reason I did this video was because of the mass amount of people who are struggling, who are worried, who are anxious, who are upset over what's going on. It's a lot of people. It's not just me. It's not. And we're not given any kind of explanation or reason or anything. I do know there was an email that was issued to some people a couple weeks ago or last week saying something about there was an issue and it's being corrected. If it is, how come I'm not getting a response? How come I didn't get that email? How come the USCIS website is still a website that is not efficient and it does not give you accurate information? It doesn't. It's probably one of the worst websites that I've ever been on. You want my feedback? USCIS wants my feedback. Your website's not very great. It's not. They've created a system now that if you are calling them because your work permit is about to expire and you did not submit your work permit closer to 150 days, you're tossed to the side. You're told, nope, sorry. The automated system is built so that you cannot get through it. The website is built so that if you want to submit a request, it literally says, we're not going to submit your request because your work permit request does not exceed 150 days. So you're stuck. You're just stuck waiting. You're stuck sitting there. I'm stuck sitting here, just waiting. It's not a fun place to be in. Thankfully, I have a little bit of savings. I'm not panicking right now. I might be panicking in a couple months, but I'm doing fine right now. The reason for why I wanted to bring this forward again is because it's a crisis. It's an injustice, and it could very much be changed and corrected very easily. It could. It really could. But it's not. After a couple months, if I create an OnlyFans, you guys will know why. I feel like I kind of need to make light of it. Like I need to make it a little more lighthearted because of how upset it makes me. It makes me really upset. It does. You know, to realize that I hate to say it, but this country does not care about people like me. Having that said, like I said, it's my birthday. It's my birthday. I'm turning 23. I'm just kidding. Turning 32. Shout out to all the Tauruses out there. Taurus gang. Taurus season. You already know. For my birthday, again, I would love you forever if you could please, of course, watch the video, share it, comment, but also talk to your peers about this. You know, talk to your peers about this, especially if you know someone, or now you know someone, now you know me. You know, talk to your parents about this. Talk to your peers, talk to your cousins, talk to your siblings, talk to everyone about this, and ask them, hey, do you know what's going on with immigration? Why is it that you're going to vote for that particular person? Do you know that this group of people are still struggling? No, that's really how you become an ally. That's really how we feel as Latinos, that we're supported. We get it. People love our food. People love our music. They're starting to realize how cool we are. And we love it. We love that you love it. But also, pull up and support our people. When I first decided to start this podcast, I decided that I was not going to talk about it. I really wasn't, just because it's such a personal topic. Again, there's no shame behind it. I'm very proud. I'll say that again. I'm very proud of who I am and where I come from. I'm particularly even more proud of my journey and how far I've come. Because if I'm being honest, and no one will ever take this away from me, I had to sprint. As soon as I got my work permit at 21 years old, I sprinted because I knew that people who were my age, my peers, people around me, they were already getting ahead. And I needed to sprint to get to where everybody else was. And while sprinting, while hitting that pavement, I didn't realize that I ran past a lot of you. I did. And I'm sorry if that hurts or if that's egotistic of me. But I did. I ran past a lot of you. And I didn't realize how much it was going to affect my mental health. And now I'm seeing that. Now I'm seeing that although I'm highly accomplished and I'm very blessed, this moment in life that I get to sit down and enjoy is not easy, because a part of me still feels very much like an immigrant, and I will forever feel like an immigrant. And that immigrant mentality of I will never ever be able to have enough, not in the physical sense, but in the spiritual sense of I want to work so hard every day, all day. That mentality is a mentality that I've been fighting since I started to work on myself. Because the mentality of let me work my butt off was a level of avoidance toward my personal healing journey. And it wasn't until I started healing that I realized I'm tired. I'm so tired. My body is exhausted. I've been working my butt off non-stop since I was 14 years old. I don't know what it's like to have any other life than to contribute, than to work my butt off. And yes, this situation sucks. I don't wish this kind of anxiety and stress on anyone. I do have to admit that I am blessed to have this moment in life where I could just sit down with myself and enjoy my presence, enjoy my home, enjoy the day, enjoy anything. I didn't have that. I didn't have that my entire life. My entire life consisted of contributing to my family as the oldest. As soon as I could, get my butt up and go work and not stop. Not stop. Because it didn't stop for me. It never was going to stop for me if life didn't tell me to stop. This is life speaking to me and saying, I need you to sit down and enjoy it. Because although it's not easy to be in this situation, I know that I deserve to rest. Thank you for joining me on episode 2 with yours truly, Miss Alex Nicholas. I really appreciated spending my birthday with you. I also appreciate the time and space that you've allowed me to speak on this topic. It's not easy for me, but I know that it'll help bring awareness. It'll expose USCIS so that things can get better. That's really all I want, is for my work permit to be approved, but along with everybody else's, and for work permits to be approved within a reasonable time frame. And also, if someone is saying, hey, listen, I had no clue that you guys were taking 10 months to approve work permits. Are you able to help me expedite my process because I'm going to lose my job? I think USCIS should be able to do that. But that's just me. Again, this topic makes me a little bit hot. It makes me a little upset. But I hope that everyone can understand that this needs to change. It really does. Again, thank you for joining me. Have a great night. Enjoy your Wednesday evening.